Hello, and welcome to Fusion Writing, where building character meets creating structure. We are on Tuesday, the map, and we are going to be talking about, in a little bit more depth, about our writing week. We always have so much fun writing, and of course, we have our meeting on Zoom, our Zoom call every Saturday, but the writing week Zoom call is always especially exciting because we're talking about the little writing projects that came out of the lessons for this month. So before I go into anything at all about my section, I'm going to turn it over to Victoria.
Hello, friends. Welcome back. This is the Tuesday map session of our writing week. This is where the rubber meets the road and we start to get the stuff on the page that we've been building as we work through the prior week's exercises. So without further ado, what I want to share with you are some of the higher level concepts that are appearing in the book that I'm writing, which is called Zettelkasten for Fiction. It's taking the best aspects of using a Zettelkasten as a research tool, as a workhorse to get your work done, and it's marrying those up with all of the different ways that you can write fiction. So it's a multi-tool because I'm not just teaching you one way. I'm giving you an array of tools so that you can pick and choose what works. So let's see how that looks in our writing week. If we go back and we look at where I began, I started with you working on character development. I wanted you to think about who is this main character that I am so in love with that I can't wait to share with the world, that I can't wait to give this gift of this awesome person to my readers and take them on a journey through my story. So if you've done your homework and you've started to do some of that character development, maybe even using the character development sheet that I shared back in month 1, if you need to go back and find that little puppy, it's super helpful. I want you to think about, how am I going to challenge this character? If you haven't started writing about the kinds of things that your character either fears or maybe things that they dread, things that they don't like or they disagree with, those are some key points that will give you a heading for how to write that character's story. For example, in my novel, my main character, Tara, has a phobia, a serious phobia of horses because of something that happened in her childhood. So what's the thing that I have to throw in? Absolutely, it has to be something with horses. So as you start to think about, how am I going to pack that character full of the things that they will then be able to challenge and triumph over in the story, that's where you're going to start writing your scenes. So that brings us to the next thing that I shared with you, which was writing scenes and sequels. And you might remember I was in the truck on the way to the Boundary Waters last time we talked about this. But the idea is, especially if you're stuck, give yourself a little bit of a challenge as a starting point. So let's say I know that I want this character to have a phobia of horses. Well, how do I know that as the author? Let's just say you know that because maybe you're fascinated with horses yourself. See how that works? You're not just choosing things because you think they might be interesting in the story, or I saw this in a book and it worked really well. No, you're choosing things that you love. Number one, those things are more fun to research because you love reading about things that you love anyway. Number two, you're way more likely to deep dive into that research if it's something that you love. So if you love horses, then by golly, put them in your story. Because the cool thing is, and you know this is true as a reader, you can really tell when an author loves the subject that they're writing about. How do you think Louis L'Amour became such a mega hit? He absolutely loved his subject matter and he dove into it and he wrote with great zest about all things cowboy. Well, that's what you need to do. You need to put on your "what do I love the most" hat and start packing those things into your story by either making them aspects of your characters or making them part of your setting or even your plot. So in terms of scene and sequel, give your character some kind of a challenge, something they're afraid of. As I said, something that's going to be one of those obstacles that they have to get through. And then the natural order of things is you're going to write the sequel. As soon as you figure out what that scene is, where maybe she's thrown off of a horse as a child and has a terrible injury and she's terrified of horses, what's the sequel going to have to be? It's got to be she has to face that fear in order to grow as a character. So start thinking about how can you challenge your own characters in that way and harness the power of scenes and sequels. Now, how do you feather in your Zettelkasten as you're starting to do this drafting and writing? Well, Kathleen's work is a perfect example of that. You're going to start looking at those cards as you've built them out, and you're going to start examining what traits can I use here? Remember when we talked about the villain versus the hero and how the villain often has some aspect of their character that the hero can play off of, and vice versa. Maybe that villain gets too overconfident, and that's exactly how the hero finally gets the best of him. Those are things that you discover when you're working in the character traits, but you have to be drafting those things out. If my villain is way overconfident, maybe his life looks like this and he's making these choices. The natural sequel to that is, now how is my hero going to best him because of this? So see how you're using both the character traits and you're also using the possibilities of scenes and sequels to draft out what does that whole story look like from beginning to end. If you happen to be an extreme plotter, maybe you're going to use the 8 plot points. And in this writing week, you're going to say, you know what? I think in the midpoint of my story, my main character is going to face that fear and have some kind of an internal change. And that's going to set them on their journey towards the end of the story. Okay, then sit down and sketch out in your drafting. What does that midpoint look like? When they look in the mirror and face that fear, what does that look like internally? What does it look like externally? Maybe they have a conversation with a friend. Draft out that dialogue. Just get those words sketched out on the page so that you can look at them and then start to decide, do I want to keep this? Do I want to change this? Do I want to incorporate something else? And then is that going to set me forward in the story? You're leaving yourself breadcrumbs in the way that you're using each of the aspects together. Ultimately, that's going to lead you to your character arc. My character starts here. They're going to face these obstacles and challenges, and they're going to end up over here. And that's another way, as you're drafting and sketching these things out, how you're going to discover that story and let it reveal some of itself to you, because you don't always know where your characters are going to go. Mine surprise me all the time, and I think, wow, how did we end up over there? But oftentimes it happens because I'm doing the writing, I'm letting the characters have their conversations, and something shows up and I think, I can't believe I thought of that. Well, I didn't. It was the characters talking to each other, but you've got to get it on the page to make those discoveries. So with that, I will send you on your way to writing. Start just drafting those things out and see where it takes you. Either way, you'll have a little bit more of your story written because of it. I'm going to send you over to Kathleen and let her take it away.
Thank you, Victoria. What I'm going to show you today in the map section is go into something that's a little bit more concrete, that's based on the 2 character trait groups that we talked about this month, attention and dependability. And we're going to see how combining character traits can help you create a more believable character, a more well-rounded character. And just by bouncing 2 different character traits off against one another, it can spark creativity that can help you write your story. So Victoria talks a lot about plotting and planning to get your story going forward. I like to start before I even write anything in my story. I like to get to know my characters by writing character sketches. And I'll show you how I do that process in the map this week. So I'm going to switch over to my down-facing camera. Okay, here we are over on my desktop. Do you remember that this time we talked about dependability was one of the character traits, subgroups that we talked about this month. And we said that dependability was broken down into responsibility and loyalty and trustworthiness and sincerity, all of the things that make your character dependable. Well, I'm going to be writing about one of the major characters in my story, Edwina, who is the mother of my youthful hero. My hero in the story is an 11-year-old boy, and his mother is Edwina. And what we're going to find out with Edwina is that she's kind of up in the air on responsibility. She's aware of the importance of responsibility, but she will give herself excuses sometimes and say, well, I don't have to do the responsible thing right now because. So we'll see how this can play out against the other character trait that character trait subgroup that we talked about this month, which is the attention subgroup. Now, the attention subgroup is interesting. It has two character traits, meekness and modesty. And the funny thing is that the way we use those two terms is somewhat the same as the way they're used when we're talking about a character trait. There's some overlap, but we're going to use these terms in a much more strict way, because these two character traits really talk about the struggle for attention. Meekness is about a character's ability to give attention to others. And modesty, we often think of being, oh, are you going to dress, prim and proper, or are you going to be in a skimpy bathing suit? We think of that as modesty. Modesty, again, when it's talking about a character trait, modesty is all about attention also. And it's about to what degree does the character feel a need to draw attention to him or herself. I'm going to be focusing in the example that I give. I'm going to use the character trait of meekness for the example. A is the actual story that I wrote that you'll get to see if you come to our fusion writing meeting on Saturday. My main character, Edwina, pretty much thinks only about herself. She has an 11-year-old son, but she gets up in the morning and she's thinking about her work assignment. She's thinking about what she's got to accomplish that day. She's got a major goal that she's got to deliver on. So then she's looking into her schedule. Oh, where do I have a time slot? Uh-oh, no time slots available. My schedule's all full. Well, I guess I need 2 solid hours. So I guess it's going to have to start at 5 p.m. So then she goes to get breakfast, and there's her son. He's fixed himself a bowl of cereal. She's going to go fix herself an English muffin. She reaches for the muffins and comes up with a wet sleeve. Oh, she put her sleeve down in orange juice. So what does she think about? Why? Oh, I should have gotten my son a breakfast? No, 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 no. She's immediately thinking, I can't wait until he's old enough to get his own orange juice without leaving a puddle on the counter. And then she communicates with Jonathan. She sits down just as he's finishing up his cereal. And so what does she say? How is your day? What have you got planned? Oh, no, 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 no. She's telling him it's going to be a late night tonight. So stay in the after school program as long as they'll have you. And then be sure to bring something extra to read. So that's the map for me for using these in writing. So what do you have to say to sum us up, Victoria?
Holy cow, that was amazing. I love the detail with which you can start to break down every aspect of the character. It's what I like to call being able to toggle them and make decisions about, if I just do this over here, what is it going to look like over there? And the perfect example is how your mother character is so concerned about herself. She doesn't even think about, the orange juice on my sleeve is much worse than the fact that I'm not making breakfast for my child and spending that time together. It's just fantastic. So I would say to our writers, this week is where the rubber meets the road. So out of this episode, choose a couple of things that resonate with you or that tickle that creativity, that little bit of inspiration, and start getting that stuff on the page, because we want to see you over in LiLLiPub and have you join us in our workshop so we can talk about your writing, start to unpack some of the wonderful story done. So we will see you over in the LiLLiPub forum.
Yep. And don't forget, Tuesdays might be the last day on YouTube for the week, But our week continues over on LiLLiPub. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're talking about these ideas over in LiLLiPub. And every Saturday, we have a wonderful Zoom call where we get together, we share writing, we talk about these ideas. So come on over to LiLLiPub and join us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.